It's time for episode 10 of Pineapples and Thorns. Today's episode is extremely special as we showcase Discord's new Stage Door feature to host a live audience, along with our special guest Andrew from Precision Base Building and Space Station Gaming. All of the images that Andrew shared with us are available to view as you listen to the show by joining the CFF server at discord.gg/clashfiles and viewing the #library channel in our server. The link to the Precision Base Building server is also available for you in that channel. Welcome to the show. We are back with an extremely exciting show for you. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Kat.
Hi, Rusty.
Hey, Kat. How's it going?
It's going great. I'm Kat. Unfortunately, Butters could not join us tonight. He's busy with class or something. Today, we are proud to be hosting a special show with a live audience who will be able to ask questions to our guest. And some people have already submitted questions, and we'll get to those after the interview portion of the show. But we will also have an opportunity during the show for members of the audience to come up on stage and ask their questions live. What they'll do is they'll raise their virtual hand, and then we'll bring them up on stage to ask their questions of Andrew. And thank you to Fox and to Discord Stage Door for giving us this amazing opportunity, and a very warm welcome to our audience. I'm going to introduce our guest, Andrew from Space Station Gaming and Precision Builders. Welcome, Andrew.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So glad to have you here. We'll jump right into the interview because we have a ton of questions for you. Base building is pretty visual, so we do have a special channel set up for you to post some images as we go, and people listening live can take a look at the Base Building Andrew channel, and they'll see some images that you'll post there as we go. It'll also be available to people once the show gets released as a podcast. You can view it in the server at that time as well. So Andrew, tell us a little bit about your Clash history and what got you playing, and you still actively play?
So I started playing quite a long time ago. I was in 5th grade and still in elementary school, and a lot of my friends started playing the game and they got me hooked, and I've kind of just played ever since. One of the first clans I joined was called Aeon Virtue, and I was lucky enough to play with a player that got me into some more competitive clans. And then eventually I found Redthorn, where you let me in and kind of took me under your wing, and I learned a lot there and moved on to competitive play in Why So Golem, where I still play today. Around that time also, I joined a server called Base Building Server, and it's basically a server to help people learn base building. And I was very interested in becoming better at base building and learning as much as I could learn there. So I did that, and that kind of became an obsession, and I just started building a ton of bases.
Yeah, that was actually my next question was what got you into base building, but obviously it has to be a passion for someone to want to develop that expertise. Tell us a little bit about your esport affiliations. You build for Space Station Gaming, a huge name in the esport scene. How challenging is that, and how many bases do you normally have to build, prep, and test for them each week?
So yeah, I'm definitely lucky enough to be with Space Station Gaming. A good friend of mine, Nathan, gave me the opportunity to come over and give it my best shot at defending the best players in the world. It's definitely a challenge. There's a lot of things you have to take into consideration. There's even more things that you have to take into consideration for planning for specific teams and some of the things that they do. And because they are the best, sometimes you have to plan for something that they'll do, but then you also have to plan if they think that you knew they would do that. So we have baits, and then we have reverse baits where the attacker would think it's baited, so you don't bait that, you bait something else. For me right now, I'm currently going through a slump. As builders, we call builder's block. It basically means that when you change your styles, you have difficulty transitioning from old concepts to new concepts. So as of right now, I'm not building a ton of bases for them, but usually when we're prepping for a Worlds weekend or a big tournament or a big match, typically between me and the other builders, we build about, I'd say 20 to 30 bases to prep for those 5 bases for the week.
Wow.
Wow.
So who play tests them? Like, do you have like specific people that you go to test your bases, or is it the players themselves who test them for you?
So in Space Station, because we have some of the best attackers in the world, we trust them to test the bases because they know everything there is to know about attacking. And it really is a team effort because as a builder, I do not know a lot of the attacking tricks and little things that other attackers might do. But because I'm able to test with the pro players, they are definitely able to kind of give some insight. And a lot of times it comes down to listening to what they have to say. Because if they say, I don't think this base will work because I will do this to it, then usually we can't use that base.
Let's talk a little bit about Precision. That's your base building service. How many people do you have building there?
As of right now, we have a relatively small team. There's 7 of us right now, and we all specialize in our own things. So as of right now, Nathan, the main person that gave me the opportunity at Space Station, him and I are focusing a lot on Town Hall 14 play. We have Danny and Maru, who are definitely our Town Hall 13 specialists. They're the people that anything when it comes to Town Hall 13 meta, they know how to stop it. And they work really, really hard to do that. We then have Deco and Jesse that specialize in Town Hall 12, and Deco is kind of our creative mind. He's the one that does a lot of wacky stuff that typically you wouldn't see, but it can throw an attacker off. And then finally we have Orca, who, in my personal opinion, is the best Town Hall 11 builder in the game right now. He specializes in no siege and just what we call just toxic bases.
So what inspired you to start your own base building service?
I was very flustered with the amount of pop-up base building servers that were happening. I've always been part of a larger service, whether that was with Stronghold bases or with RH base building, and there's always another server being built. There's always that next server. And I was kind of troubled by the amount of smaller servers that were starting up, and they were growing in members, but they weren't necessarily growing in quality. And I really wanted to, with the experience I have and the influence I have on the base building community, I wanted to build up a server that I knew people could get quality bases from, that are tested properly and done the right way, so that they actually get the quality base that they pay for.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. So I've got your price list here in front of me. Do you mind if I read it off, or do
Go for it.
you want to?
Go for it.
So I'm assuming that these are American dollars, correct?
Correct.
So it would be adjusted a little bit accordingly depending where you are in the world. So $12 for Town Hall 11, $14 for Town Hall 12, $16 for Town Hall 13, and then $18 for a Town Hall 14 base. Maybe you could clarify, what exactly people are purchasing when they shell out that money.
Sure.
So some people are a little hesitant to shell money for bases. So are these like Supercell, CWL bases, or organized league bases, ESL bases, that kind of thing? If you wouldn't mind just talking about that sort of thing.
So our bases are custom built for whatever the customer needs. So as of right now, talking about Town Hall 14 specifically, at least, if the customer would request a Legends League base, we would build them a Legends League base. If the customer would request an anti-3 base for ESL play, then we would build them that. Supercell CWL, we would build them something for that. Each level of play kind of has its own style of building per se, depending on what you would see. So for example, in Supercell CWL, we see a lot of P.E.K.K.A. Smash. Typically, you would see the somewhat easier strategies. So you would build the base to defend, let's say, a P.E.K.K.A. Smash. In Legends League, the attackers don't really have much time to plan, and they can't change their army. So you build a little bit more trolley and typically a symmetrical base to throw an attacker off, because they don't have any extra time to plan, and they can't change the army and adjust for things like if you have an extra layer of walls that they didn't bring a wall breaker for.
Of course, it totally makes sense.
And then as for the price, so our Town Hall 14 bases are $18, and then it goes down in increments of $2 for the bases. So for our Town Hall 14s, what you're paying for is the custom base that's built by a professional builder, as well as the testing that gets done on that base to make sure it will perform well for you in war. In that $18 is also a warranty. In case your base does not perform properly, we will replace it 100% free, no questions asked. We really do pride ourselves on base quality, and we are 100% willing to give you another base if something doesn't go right.
As somebody who has been part of the league level play and stuff, I understand what that means, but maybe would you want to clarify what a base that does not perform correctly would mean to somebody? Not everyone's going to understand necessarily exactly what that means. Is it meaning, if you get fresh 3 Town Hall versus Town Hall, or is it, that sort of thing?
Of course. So as of right now, we believe that the attacking meta in the game is quite strong compared to the building meta. However, because of that, we are still base builders and we are still asking for money for a base. So we want to provide a quality guarantee, something that will make sure that if you are not satisfied, we can at least discuss it. And if you at the end of the day are not happy with the service that you got from us, all you do is let us know.
Oh, cool. So you can sort of just like DM you guys and be like, hey, this guy hit me with like 50 wall breakers and he got 2 stars. What's going on there?
Yeah.
Like that sort of thing?
Yeah, there's usually a discussion that happens if a base is cleared on the first hit that you used it in a war. All you need to do is send us the screenshot saying, hey, it got 3-starred the first time someone hit it, and we'll replace it. No questions asked.
Awesome. Do you guys have any sort of like subscription service or anything like that? And if you do, what are they?
So right now we are kind of working on something behind the scenes. We want to do a group of bases. It would be like 5 bases for like $15. We want it to be cheap. We want it to be affordable, but we also want those bases to be really like quality bases. And the reason that it would be cheaper for the 5 bases would be that we would limit the amount of people that could buy the pack. Each person that buys the pack would get the same 5 bases. And there will actually be more information on that coming in the server very soon.
That's really cool. So I've played with you a bunch in League. I suspect I might know the answer to this, but I don't want to say it. Is there a particular town hall level that is your preference to be building? Because I actually haven't played with you since 14 came out, so I don't even know. I mean, maybe it could be 14, but I don't know. So yeah, do you have a preference as to what you personally prefer?
My favorite definitely has to be Town Hall 12. That has been the thing that really gave me the reputation I have and really allowed me to do bigger things in the base building community. So I think I'll always have that appreciation for Town Hall 12 building and attacking. It's definitely my favorite and it has a sweet spot.
Oh, cool. So maybe just talk to us about the basics of base building then, concepts that maybe you apply to all town hall levels versus ones that are specific for only certain town halls, I guess. And then, just give us a rundown on that if you could.
So obviously it's quite complicated. However, I'll try and put it like a couple of things out that I think are a little bit like they're common for every base.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, there's the sort of thing that applies to like every base. Sorry, I didn't want it to sound like so structured. Yeah, just basically, the sort of concepts that apply to every level that would be good for people to know that you can apply to all town halls as opposed to certain town halls. Like if you're building in Town Hall 10, you're not building a base for an eagle, right? That sort of thing. So anything that sort of applies to all the bases.
Okay, so for me, one big thing, and I'm going to try not to hop around too much here, but one big thing for me is definitely compartments that line up. And I actually have an image for this that we'll be uploading. For me, I believe that if you have compartments that line up, it will limit the amount of value that, say, a queen or a wizard will get. And we have the image and it's loading. There's also...
Okay, awesome. Yeah, get that uploaded.
Okay, so in the image, there's going to be like almost 2 pluses. The top one is showing how walls can line up and each quadrant would have its own compartment. And the bottom one shows walls that aren't necessarily lined up properly. The reason this comes into play is because the queen's range is going to be the same no matter how your walls are lined up. So if you have a layer of walls that is closer to a certain defense, so let's say because the queen's range is 4 tiles in the bottom picture for reference, the queen would be able to reach the buildings in the 6 o'clock quadrant from the 3 o'clock quadrant if they are lined up the same as if the walls were even. That was confusing.
No, I get it. If you're looking at the picture, it totally does make sense.
No, that makes sense. Yeah.
It's hard to understand if you're not looking at the picture, but if you open up the picture with the X's there, it definitely does make sense.
This will make it a little bit easier. Okay, so while that's uploading, I'm going to move on to the next thing. Another big thing for me that I believe is that wizard towers and air defenses should not be near each other. Or, well, they can be near each other, but they shouldn't be to the point that the wizard tower can shoot the air defense. So this is because for a Lalo attack, the Hound will always be on the air defense. However, you need to depend on splash damage to take out balloons. So if you can get a Hound to sit on air defense and then make the attacker deal with the wizard tower shooting loons, maybe you can force a spell out, maybe you can just kill off loons. But if doing that will definitely make it more complex for an attacker. At Town Hall 14, this also goes for scatter shots. Any single shot splash damage defense should not be able to be focused on an air defense.
Yeah, for sure. Now, as somebody who's not, I know nothing about base building. For a situation like that, would you so you would have them offset, essentially, is what you're saying, right? You would have the splash offset from from the air defense, like maybe set back one tile, or would you have it set forward one tile? Because you said you don't want to have them side by side and not in the range.
Mm-hmm.
Or is having them parallel fine, just as long as they're not quite beside each other within, damage range of each other?
I have a picture here that I can show. Basically, it just means that the wizard tower's range should not be covering the center of the air defense. So like in the picture it's being posted right now, I would say that would be a more optimal placement than, say, if the wizard tower was where the gold storage is.
Right. So you're not necessarily saying that you don't want the wizard tower tucked behind it or vice versa. You just need to make sure that they're enough out of range, but yet if you have troops coming through that area, they're going to get hit by both at one point.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. No, that totally makes sense.
I'll try and give one more. This would be, I guess this isn't for all town hall levels. However, it's at town hall levels 9 and up. It's about DPS, or damage per second. The amount of damage that your defenses would be doing to the main force of the attack throughout the attack. We have something that we call unreachable DPS. That's our little name that we give it in the building community. And basically it means having, for the reason I say Town Hall 9 and up is because of expos. Having expos unreachable from where the main force of an attack will be. So I have an image for this too. And it basically shows that on the image, it's going to have an arrow and it's going to have expos that are going to be highlighted. And it's basically just showing that the expos cannot be reached from the main force of the attack. And this is done through adding extra compartments and doing things like a dead zone. It'll make a little bit more sense when there's an image. But basically it's, if you are trying to trap a attack in a certain area, let's say it's the core of your base.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that the flanking damage is stronger than the damage that the attack is pushing through.
Yeah. So for instance, your image did upload. So this is more so a guess from me because, again, like I say, I know nothing about base building. So you've got the expo highlighted and then you've got the arrow going through. You've got, that arrow goes between 4 storages. And all of those storages, just based on my class knowledge, for sure 3, if not 4, are within the ground expo's range. So is that what you're meaning? Is those are all things that are going to tie up that attacking squad while that expo is doing the damage?
Kind of, but I also mean that if an attack goes through the center of the base, it's very likely that an attacker would then jump to the eagle after going through that inferno compartment.
Yeah.
And it just basically means that there's always going to be damage on the attack no matter where it goes, because that's where the term unreachable comes from, because
yeah, for sure,
the attack will not get to those expos, so they are doing damage for the optimal amount of time.
Yeah, and in this particular instance, if somebody were to quad quake it, they would be leaving the expo compartments untouched and opening up most likely that core with the eagle. So that is, like you said, the untouchable defense.
Correct, yes.
Okay, that makes sense to me. I hope it makes sense to everybody else. Yeah. So what about, is there any more specific things that are apply to all town halls, or do you want to touch on the Town Hall 14 stuff? Town Hall 14, I'm sure, is a big focus these days because it's the new toy, right? Everyone is playing that at the highest level. And also in terms of base building, it is a business for you. Town Hall 14 can't get dipped. So people are looking for bases that are going to be good. Whenever you're buying a lower Town Hall base, you can always, if you want to run it in a random, it could get dipped or something. But if you're going to run the Town Hall 14s, I'm sure you guys are spending a lot of focus on that, trying to come up with creative ideas to thwart off attackers that haven't been thought of, essentially, right?
So when we're building the ESL bases, or what we call them, ESL worlds, whatever you'd like to call them, they're the bases that we build for the top attackers, the alternate attacks, the Tribe Gamings, the Vatangs, the MCS.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost a chore, very complex, and the amount of mind games that would go back and forth between an attacker and a builder. If an attacker really likes to do Queen Charge Lalo, and I give the attacker a queen charge Lalo plan on the base, I try and make a very obvious queen charge Lalo plan. The attacker will just say, well, that's really obvious, so I won't do that one. And so it really does. It goes back and forth. However, we have testing that we can do on the bases to really make sure that we get them the exact way we want them. And another big thing that comes in when we're building against these players is we know their tendencies. A lot of the top wars are streamed, so especially the big name clans. So we do kind of get an idea of what an attacker might use. And then when we're building to defend those things, you can apply those kind of basics to all the bases that you're trying to defend a certain strategy with. For example, if we play against a clan that really likes to do P.E.K.K.A. Smash, we noticed, or at least I have noticed, that an area of really, really high DPS on the back end will shut down a P.E.K.K.A. Smash if you tie it with some heroes, with Teslas, and really all your DPS on the base. And you can do things like that. One, they really work in Legends bases, which I have an example of. They also really work for baiting specific strategies. Give me one sec. Okay, so for example, this base was something that we built for the first qualifier. So one of the things that we did was, for the first qualifier, we really wanted to use ring bases. Ring bases were kind of something that get left behind in the building meta. A lot of builders and a lot of attackers typically don't deal with ring bases unless they're pushing in Legends League. So our goal going into it was not every team out there is 100% comfortable attacking ring bases. So we figured maybe we could exploit that. And to some extent, I would say we did. First day of qualifiers, our bases did really, really well. So it goes to show that putting an attacker in an uncomfortable situation can sometimes be better than actually building a good base. So I would say that that would be one of the main factors in designing a base, is definitely make the attacker uncomfortable. Maybe it's something they haven't seen before. Maybe it's something they haven't seen in a while. But if you can make them uncomfortable, it definitely will give you a better chance of defending them.
Yeah, that makes sense. So one question I had is, as a factor when you're building a base, do you have to factor in the fact 3 out of the 4 siege machines go in a straight line towards the town hall, but the siege barracks doesn't? So is that something that you have to factor in?
So typically we see a siege barracks going on a side that's opposite of the town hall. Typically we have siege barracks in smash attacks and in hybrid. When I'm building a base, I can see the most obvious hybrid plan for the base. I can think in my head, okay, well, an attacker will probably do this. And in that plan in my head, we do count in the siege barracks, and we see, okay, well, the siege barracks will go, from the 6 o'clock corner to the 9 o'clock corner, and we need to make sure that those troops die. And one of the best ways that you can do that actually is, maybe you put a giant bomb in the grass on the outside, and the wizards come walking through and they get hit by the giant bomb. Or we use a lot of holes, wall holes, what we call them, in the previous meta with Town Hall 13. And what that led to is the siege barracks troops would walk into a hole and sometimes get trapped in the compartment that they went into. And that was definitely something that I know I at least tried a couple of times to take to an extreme. Maybe I would put Teslas in that compartment with, some giant bombs and actually just completely take out the siege barracks, just take it out of play completely. The other time we see the siege barracks is typically in a smash attack, where an attacker will try to warden walk a value and then smash into something else. With Town Hall 14 right now, the town hall is such a big value that a lot of times for smash attacks, we see attackers warden walking the town hall and then entering adjacent to that. So what we can do is, if the town hall is at 6 o'clock, we know that the siege barracks will either be placed at 9 o'clock or at 3 o'clock and go up towards the top base. So typically, because we know that's going to be there, yes, maybe you put a giant bomb or two on the outside to try and take out those troops, but your main goal is going to be to stop the smash, and to stop the smash, you need to stop the healers. So the big thing I would say for siege barracks is you need to worry about the smash for it, and to worry about the smash for it, typically you need Seeking Air Mines to take out healers.
Yeah, that is.
That's great information. We have a ton of questions from our audience that have been submitted in the Base Build Questions channel. So we're going to start giving those to you. Peter's going to read them off. And then once we finish going through those, I'm going to remind the audience, if you'd like to come up on stage and ask your questions to Andrew directly, once we get through the submitted questions, just raise your virtual hand and we will bring you up on stage. If you prefer to submit your question by text, just type it in the Base Build questions channel, and we'll do our best to get all the questions answered. Peter, go ahead.
So Andrew, you had 15 people separately ask many questions, and I've tried to organize them a little bit by topic, and you've touched on many of these things, but I'm just going to read off the questions and acknowledge the people who submitted them, because this is what we need, the content. So here we go. This one is from Good Cop, Bad Cop. He asks, what can you tell us about the logistics of building and testing for SSG? Do you build for specific players on your team, or do the bases go into a central pool to be used by whomever?
Okay, so that's actually, that is a very good question. So it's a little complex, and I'm not 100% sure how much I'm actually allowed to say.
Right.
But generally, it does go into a central pool where all the builders kind of combine their efforts to build a ton of bases that we can test, and then we pick the best ones out of those bases, and then just assign them to the players.
Then his follow-up question then is, does everyone test?
Yes, I mean, that is, or well, at least in SSG, every single member on the roster, and sometimes even the members of Train Station Gaming and Lost Meta Gaming, it's this huge effort to make sure that we are truly as best prepared as we can be for our biggest wars. So yes, I would say everyone tests and everyone plays a big part in it.
Excellent. And then his last question, or the last follow-up, is, given that you can all triple just about anything, what is the threshold to determine that a base is ready to be used in a tournament?
So that's typically based on our studying. So at least for me personally, I do like to do a lot of studying on our opponents. I like to watch back streams. I like to listen to what some people have to say about certain attackers. I really do like to do my research and then build the base according to what they like to use and what some of their tendencies are. So I would say that for me, if I truly believe an attacker will do an attack on a base because I have put the research in and I have built the base specifically to have that attacker hit it, then usually we can come to a general consensus that if the base defends that attack, we can use it. And then we go from there. Sometimes it doesn't defend that attack, and then we have to get rid of the base. So it's
Right.
It's tough because, like you said, our testers, our players are so good that sometimes it can be frustrating at times to test bases because they do just triple everything. But usually we sit down on voice for a night or two and really focus on what the attacker would do and can we defend, maybe that strategy and one or two others. And then if we can, then the base is usually ready to go.
If you were defending a Lalo attacker, somebody that typically did like a Lalo attack, and you have your guys testing it and all that stuff, how many sort of different angles and different variations of troop comps would you try? Like, do you just let people do their sort of thing, or do you try specific angles all the time? How does that work?
We usually try and let the players use their jurisdiction. We really do put a lot of trust into what they have to say, and they also sometimes are doing research themselves. The big one in my mind that always comes up, Agent. Agent is always testing bases with us, but he's also always giving us ideas, oh, well, someone might do this, someone might do that. And he's a big part of it. But every single player, like I said earlier, is a huge part of testing things. And just when you think, oh, well, I might have defended this plan, someone else comes along and says, but I wouldn't do that. I would do this. And then we have to worry about both plans.
The never-ending battle. Mason from Crystal to Join asks, since most bases can be tripled by high-skilled players you face, do you find baiting to be a large part of defending?
I would say baiting is the only way of defending.
I like that.
I think that if you're going to try and defend the best of the best, you have to trick them, you have to fool them, or you have to make them feel uncomfortable. And every single one of those things is a bait in some way. If it's a ring base, you're making them feel uncomfortable, but if you make them feel uncomfortable, then they might do something that's kind of out of the ordinary. So sometimes making them feel uncomfortable isn't the best. I could go on for hours talking about baits, but I'm going to try and say, if I'm going to bait an attack, I'm going to think of how the attacker will see the base, and then I'm going to think of how I see the base. If I know a specific attacker likes to do something, then I can build accordingly. However, if I don't know the attacker, then I need to trust myself and I need to trust my testers that they will see the same plan as the attacker we're against. So I would say baiting is the only way to defend the high-skilled players, but testing is probably the biggest part of defending them.
Is that the same for every town hall, or is that only for when you're doing, the higher town halls or leagues that that are town hall versus town hall, like no dip leagues?
I would say no, it's not the same. I would say baiting is the only way to defend the highest level. You can build a genuinely good base against high level players to, medium and low level players. It's just the very best of the best. There's not a good way to defend them other than forcing them to make a mistake. Typically, what we have seen with precision is building kind of awkward bases, something that the attacker will say, I've never seen that before. I don't know how to approach this. Typically, that is actually one of the best ways to get a defense in anything other than the very top level of play.
Cool. Following on from Mason's question, I have Forco from Pineapple Hotel, and he's asking, when you design a base, is it literally planned and used for one defense and then burned? Like you're done with that base?
In SSG, I would say yes, because typically our wars are streamed. So, we have all these great bots now, which as a builder, of course, I'm not the biggest fan of, but the bots like Burnt Base, where you can search an image of the base and find a video on how it was 3-starred. So
yeah, that's probably not your friend, hey?
No, not at all.
Ideal as a base builder.
No, it's definitely not my favorite, but it's okay because, if I build a base for a customer, I'm building it for them for their first war. I'm saying, hey, this is going to defend for you 100% in your first war. And if for some reason it doesn't, then I can say, well, now you have that base, which I know is a good base. I know it was tested well, and I know it's going to get you defenses, but we're going to build you another one too, just to compensate for the war you needed it for, it didn't perform in. So we build you a second one and you get both bases for compensation. I would also say that, you need to tell me the question again.
Just once it's used once, are you finished with it? You said yes in SSG, but your customers that are just playing, they maybe can use it a little longer than that. I think that answered the question.
Yes. The customers, they can use it. There's clans that are specifically meant to go to do friendly challenges just to practice. And the other day I went over to one. I wanted to just practice my Town Hall 14 attacks. And when I joined the clan, one of my customers was actually in the clan and recognized me.
Hey.
And he had gotten a base from me almost a month ago, and he said he was still using it, and it was still holding really, really strong for him. So the customers that we have in Precision, they really do have success using the bases over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay, we're going to change speeds a little bit. This question is from Got Band. He's a co-leader in Dark Sector and Darkthorn, and he asks, are Tesla farms really necessary?
I would say yes. Typically, a Tesla farm of 4 is necessary. However, maybe you can have your 5th one off to the side or somewhere else, maybe to mess up pathing or, to pull balloons away or hogs away from an attack. But I would say that as of right now in the building meta and how the attacking meta is so strong, you need an area of high DPS, and a Tesla farm can provide that for you.
Excellent. Got Band also asks, expos on ground or air?
I would say for Town Hall 14, ground. It's not a simple science either. It definitely depends on when you build the base, what you think the attacks will be. And if you're struggling to defend something like dragons, then you might want to consider switching some expos to air. However, the majority of attacks in the game involves some sort of ground portion, whether that be a Sui hero, a queen charge, or just a straight out ground smash. So typically at Town Hall 13 and 14, I would say you're always going to be safe with 2 expos on ground, if not 3. However, at Town Hall 12 and Town Hall 11, sometimes ground expos aren't the greatest thing. Sometimes you maybe want 1 ground expo and the others on air. Because with the lower Town Hall levels, there's less variety. Like there's less attacks that are considered quote unquote meta. So at Town Hall 11, for example, there's not as many ground attacks as there are, let's say, a Lalo or a dragon attack. Like Zap Drags is a really big attack at Town Hall 11. So you can't put all your eggs in one basket and assume that they go with a witch spam and go 4 ground bows.
Excellent. Okay, let's move on. Red Hair, one of our new server members, asks, how did you learn base building?
Oh, God. Playing the game way too much. In all honesty, and I say this all the time to my co-leaders in Why So Golem, is that if I was not a kid and I was not in school when I was starting to base build, I don't think I would have ever gotten good at it. I don't think that it's something that you just become good at. I think it's something that you just need to do over and over and over again. I have a private vault for myself that I started pretty early on, and it has close to 9,000 bases in it right now of just
Oh my
bases that
goodness.
I have built. First off, it's something I'm very glad I kept because it's so much fun to go back and look at some of this stuff. But you learn things as you build. You learn little knickknacks and things that typically you wouldn't think of, and then once you do it, then maybe on the next base you incorporate that and see how it goes. I remember in one case in particular, we were testing bases for playoffs for CWL Season 9 Rising. We were testing bases in Why So Golem, and I think it was one of my friends, Danny, who was doing a hybrid attack, and I just could not stop the hybrid. So I thought in my head, I said, what if I put skeleton traps, combine them with the queen? Because the queen does really good DPS, and the skeleton traps will get the miners stuck on them for such a long time that maybe the queen will be able to take them out. So Danny went from tripling the base and not needing to use some of his spells and not ever burning queen ability, and he had a huge group of miners, to his miners stopping dead in their tracks in the core, and the attack failed at like a 60%. So moving forward, now that's something in the back of my head. If I need to stop a hybrid attack, I can do that.
Very good. I have a follow-up to that. This one is from Hero. He's one of our Clash podcast friends. He asks, is it worth investing the time to learn how to base build while being a filthy casual?
To be completely honest, I don't know if it's worth the time. I think if you have the time, I personally enjoy it. When I started building bases, I was a freshman in high school. I really didn't have that much schoolwork to do, and a lot of my free time was spent building bases. If I wouldn't have learned it then and I would have tried to learn it now, I personally wouldn't have the time to be building 10, 15 bases a day just to get the basics down. And I really do think that's what it takes to become a good builder in a relatively short amount of time. That being said, there are places to go to for help. I know in RH base building, we're doing paid base building classes where we're just doing one-on-ones with members. And I know we have a big community-based building server as well, where myself and some of the others that I build with are quote-unquote pros in the server. And basically, they are members of the server who have been building for a long time and have passed tryouts to be considered good enough to give others input on how to build. And you can post bases there. Everything's completely free. And in my personal opinion, if you want to learn building, you need to be in the server. You have to be in that server because there's so many people there that are trying to get good at building, just like you would be. And if you are not surrounded by a good community, you're not going to have the motivation to do what you need to do.
Gotcha. And Iwas Al-Qaeda, he just made recently an elder in Kent Greenhouse. He has a follow-up or a similar question. Do you recommend for everyone to try and build their own bases, or should we just rely on you? You just answered that we should, if we're committed, we need to get to the right place, but is a pro builder just going to be better anyway?
I don't know. I think, in my opinion, there are definitely times where I'll see someone's base and I'll think in my head, I would have never done that. I also can think in my head, but I used to do that at one point. I remember that aha moment when I stopped doing that one specific thing. And so for me, I think that it's always worth giving something a shot. If you don't think you're making progress or you don't think you're getting anywhere with it, then maybe you can rely on a pro builder. I do think that even if you're not trying to become a pro builder and you're just trying to become a better player in general, learning the basics of base building will also help you become a better attacker.
And that leads right into Forco's question. Do you feel that learning base building has made you, Andrew, a better attacker?
So actually, to be completely honest, no. I think it helps me to see plans for bases. I don't spend my time practicing attacking. I spend my time building bases. There's definitely been times where I've went 2-3 weeks without doing a single attack, but I've built almost 100 bases in that period.
Oh.
So I think that if you are trying to become a better attacker, practice attacking and maybe dabble a little bit in base building just to understand, well, my queen can reach this if the compartment looks like this, or learning what we call wiggle walls, the little zigzag walls, learning, the basic walkability of, well, my queen will reach this. If you are doing base building to become a better attacker, I don't think you should focus on it really, really hard. I think you should just learn the basics.
Basics, okay. All right, we're going to change topics again. Good Cop, Bad Cop has another one. He's asking, which builders, past and present, do you admire most?
And
Oh,
you're not allowed to
God.
say Rusty. You're not allowed to say me.
Not allowed to say Rusty, darn.
Yeah.
Base builders past and present. Okay, past base builders. Okay, so when I had just started doing competitive wars, I joined as a Town Hall 9. And Prince of Dubai, he was one of the guys that helped a lot with the Dark Looters bases way, way back in the day. He was definitely someone that I saw his bases and I kind of looked up to. I definitely wanted to try a couple of the things that he was doing. To be completely honest, when I had just started base building, I didn't know who to look up to. I wasn't in the big base building server to, see how other people were building. To be completely honest, I had to force myself to learn. As of right now, I definitely admire a lot more people than I did then. I think it also comes with being younger. I definitely had more of an ego when I had just started out. I thought I was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And looking at it now, I can definitely see it. There are definitely a lot of people that are better than I am and are doing things that I can't see myself doing. A couple of people, I would say Pishen, he's a builder at RH and he's a builder with us at SSG. He is just a base building machine. Like the amount of bases that he can pump out in a short amount of time, and they are all so good, is something I wish I could do. And I definitely respect him for that. The builders I definitely respect the most are the ones that I'm close with. Deco, Danny, Maru, Dressy. Those four in particular. Deco is, like I said earlier, is our creative mind at Precision. He's the one that always will do something stupid, something wacky, and you'll never expect it to work, and it will. He'll force it to work. And I definitely admire the fact that he's creative like that, and he can definitely, just the way he thinks of things. I mean, he'll build a Town Hall 11 base, like a Town Hall 13 base, and use expos as scatters, and it'll work, and you'll just be like, how did you come up with that? Why did you do that? Maru was like my quote unquote my first student. He was one of the people that, for whatever reason, I honestly don't even know why, but I don't regret it. I tried to take under my wing and I really tried to help improve to be the best he could be. And then when he was ready, kind of let him go off on his own, figure things out for himself. And he did. He definitely did in a really good way. And, his bases are performing at a very, very high level. He's building, I believe right now he's building for a couple of esports teams, and he's definitely kind of making his own path. Probably out of the four of them, though, I don't know if the other three have to really work like Danny does. Danny's just committed to it. He'll build a base and it'll be awful, and I'll just straight up tell him, I'll say, Danny, that is awful. And he'll get right back to work and he'll make something better. He has to work for it more than the other three do. It's like his passion for it is just something I wish I had.
Okay. Good Cop, Bad Cop's last question is, what has been your proudest moment as a builder? And, of course, to follow that up, what has been your most embarrassing?
Okay, I'm going to start with the most embarrassing because this is actually so funny. So I was building with Stronghold bases for a while. I don't remember exactly how long it was, but I was there for a while, and I've met a lot of good friends that I have in the game from there. One of the admins at the time, we named Snore. He's a very, very good attacker, and I had built a base for VM, one of my clans that I'm so happy I'm a part of, but I built a base for one of the people in there, and Snore recognized it was one of my bases and sat there and just planned. And I checked back in the next morning. I went to bed. It hadn't been hit yet. I checked back in the next morning, and the base is tripled. And when I go to watch the replay, there is 7 spells just swagged all over the base.
Ouch.
And of course, the issue was that he knew it was my base, and I was supposed to be this pro builder, and it was embarrassing, but it was also definitely really funny because we both knew exactly what had just happened there.
Yep, he bluffed the bluffer.
Yeah, it was.
Is that just because
funny,
he
though?
sort of knew how you build bases and he knows your go-tos kind of thing?
Honestly, I think it's just because he's just that good of an attacker, but it
Yeah,
was
that's
just
fair.
funny. It was something that that was definitely the worst one of my bases has ever done. And of course, the worst part of it is I wasn't the one running it. So it is what it is, but that's definitely my most embarrassing. Most proud moment of base building probably isn't actually something I've done, but it's something that like me and the guys I just mentioned, plus a couple of others that we've achieved as a group. In CWL Season 9 Rising, we had, as a clan, we had a low attacking rate. We had, I think, like the fourth to the lowest attacking rate as a clan. Our base building was able to, in playoffs, hold our opponents to, 88 stars, 89 stars, and 87 stars. And then in the final war, we were able to win in the finals because one of our bases held. And I think definitely that's my proudest moment as a builder. It isn't actually something I did alone, but it's definitely what me and my guys were able to achieve as a group and how hard we all worked for it. And to see it all kind of be put together like that was really awesome.
Andrew, the next part of the questions are all kind of about your style. I'm just going to read kind of each person's comment, and then you can kind of take it from there. God Band asks, why do so many base builders put small bombs in and around the town hall? He likes spring traps and small bombs elsewhere. The next guy asks, this is Magnus. He's a member of Dark Sector and Darkthorn. What do you look for when considering baiting an entry? And Footy Matt, he's a member of K Farmhouse and Phantom Zone. He asks, what do you think of when positioning traps? I got a couple more. A lot of people want about your style. So Abhay, 2201, he asks, do builders have specific styles of building? For example, do bases significantly have noticeable differences or are signature styles with comparison to other builders? And lastly, Good Cop, Bad Cop, I think he asked the most questions. Do you ever try to build in the style of someone else? And do you have your own style? So there's a massively open question, and go ahead.
Okay, so starting at the first one, small bombs around the town hall. So I think that's something that just kind of carried over from when the sneaky blimp for the town hall was just started. We found that 3 small bombs would kill sneakies, and 2 small bombs would bounce them around for long enough that they would lose their invisibility before taking out the town hall. With the building meta, we kind of have to adjust with the attacking meta, and attackers now, if it's a high-risk attack, they just assume that it's baited, and therefore they bring what we call safe blimp, which consists of some barbarians, maybe some normal goblins, stuff to just soak up all the traps before the sneaky gobs come out, and then the traps become obsolete. So I would say that as for traps around the town hall, springs or small bombs, I would say it's up to you. However, in any situation, I would still recommend them having them there just in case an attacker does not bring that safe blimp. That's what those small bombs are for. Trying to think of some of the other ones. One was about traps. Where do I place my traps?
Yeah, what do you think of when you're positioning traps?
Definitely, for me, I focus more on what I think an attacker will do. For example, if I think a hybrid attack will come from a certain direction, then I'm going to make sure my spring traps are in the path of that hybrid that I think is going to be used. That also goes with smash attacks. I said before about having Seeking Air Mines to take out healers. If I have a smash attack that I believe I'll see, I'll make sure I have Seeking Air Mines to take out the healers for it. Traps are one of the things that you can adjust while you test the base. So I actually can't think of a base I've built in recent memory that I built it, and then when I tested it, I didn't touch a single trap. They're always moving around all over the place.
That's part of the testing. Yeah, good.
Yeah, as for baiting attacks, I think there was a question in there about what do I look for when I'm baiting an attack. I think the biggest thing is trying to get in the attacker's head and know what they'll do. Either that or building the base specifically to make a plan obvious. We had a base in CDRL Rising that we had a clan that we knew did a lot of hybrid. We had one attacker that in particular had a very, very high hit rate only using hybrid. So at Town Hall 12, it's kind of difficult to attack or to defend the really good attackers. So what we knew we had to do was bait the attack like crazy and hope that this attacker specifically picked
Yeah.
the 2 bases we built to defend him. So we built the bases, we tested them like crazy, and at the end of the day, we had a team of probably 11 or 12 builders with WSG. Now it's more. We have a huge group, and we're really tight, and it's awesome, but we all work together on these. So we all kind of worked together and just said, okay, we think these 2 bases he'll hit. And then we had to make sure that none of the other bases that we had built were something that we think that he would hit. A big part about baiting attacks is making sure you don't have teammates running bases that could also be considered advantageous for that attack. I
Yeah,
had that
you want to
issue.
entice them to hit them, right? You want to make sure
Correct.
that those are
Yeah.
the bases they're hitting.
Yep. Especially because this was in the Rising playoffs, and it was a 30-man war, so we didn't really have the time to build and test 30 bases like perfectly, that we tested every single strategy on each. So a lot of what we were doing was baiting specific attacks that we knew they did, testing those specific attacks, and then making sure that all the bases lined up so the attackers would hit the bases that they were supposed to hit. And at the end of the day, we did actually end up defending both of this player's hybrid attacks, and it actually led to us winning that war.
Awesome.
As for the other ones, one was,
do you
ever
have a
build in
style?
Oh, my style. My style, in my opinion, like I said, right now I'm kind of going through a little bit of builder's block, trying to figure out what I actually want my style to be right now. My style is really just anything abnormal. For a normal customer, typically I build a base that is unlike anything they've ever seen. I want the customer to be like, wow, I don't know how I would hit that. But then I also want the attacker that they may play against to say, wow, I don't know how I would hit that. However, my style, and I don't know, unfortunately, I can't share images of bases that were sold. That's a big thing for me. I obviously cannot show, if someone paid for a base, nobody else sees it other than the builder who built the base and the customer. So I don't know how much I actually have to show. I do have a wall skeleton screenshot of a promotional base that we did, something that was free. And I can show that. I can show the walls of it, just to kind of show that like my style is not like a typical base. However, one thing I did like for a very long time was open compartments. I liked the idea of having a base that maybe it had a compartment, or an inferno that was just exposed, because we always see key defenses inside of compartments. So I thought, well, what if we just have a channel leading into the base with a compartment? How would an attacker hit that? And they did really well. Some of them had, well, we had some very positive feedback from a lot of customers about them, and then I figured, okay, well, so for the normal customer, this type of base is awesome. I have a scout view of a Town Hall 13 base as well, then. That would be considered this style. And then as for would I ever build someone else's style, I really try not to do that. I'll get in a flow of building and then just stick in that flow of building. I think that that's something that is the best for me, is that I kind of get in a rhythm and then just build like that until that rhythm's kind of gone, then I go to something else. So I would say that right now, I don't really have too much of a rhythm. I'm transitioning. In the past, that's what I've done with some of my bases, and that would be my style.
Fantastic.
I don't know if there were any that I missed.
Nope, that was it. That was everything. Where are we here? Okay, Tony from Noble Hero says, I can't understand the bases with gaps in the walls. That makes no sense to him, and maybe Andrew can explain that.
So, okay. We have to kind of go back a little bit to Town Hall 13, because with the Town Hall 14 update, they actually fixed this. However, in the Town Hall 13 sandbox, I'll call it, the queen did not like to go into the open walls. She just, for whatever reason, liked to avoid them. At the same time, super wall breakers are very, very strong, and they still are. What they like to do is they'll like to target a wall that you really just don't want them to target and open it up. So as builders, what we were doing is we were opening holes in walls to control where the wall breakers would go. And because the queen didn't like to go into the walls, we really weren't sacrificing anything by having those walls open. Now with the Town Hall 14 update, it's changed. However, the queen still doesn't really like to walk in them. But it's inconsistent. She does sometimes, other times she doesn't. Back then, she didn't like to walk in them at all.
I think that's good. I think that's answered it.
Makes sense to me.
Do the openings in the base have anything to do with trying to scatter up like witches and stuff?
At lower town hall levels, they can. I definitely built a couple of bases at town hall 12 that I left walls open on purpose so that instead of the witches going down flanks, they would go into compartments and die. Yeah, you can do it like that. I answered that question particularly thinking about Town Hall 13, Town Hall 14, where witches really aren't as common.
Andrew, you've already talked about building, ring bases to create discomfort for the attacker. Do you feel that ring bases or centralized town hall bases are better at Ante 3 at Town Hall 14? That one came from Reggae Shark. But Eggy also asked, do you prefer a town hall in the core or more towards the edges when base building? Or is this solely base dependent? Or I guess from your point of view, attacker dependent?
I would say Ante 2 or Ante 3 definitely depends on the attackers you're going against. Like I said, people who do a lot of Legends attacks will typically play against a lot of ring bases because a ring base is very difficult to funnel on because the compartments are so big and you can't reach the things inside of them to set a funnel. So they're really good for Legends attacks where the attacker can't change their army once they go into it. They can't adjust for a funnel or say, well, I might need a bowler bounce this, or maybe send sneakies to this to fully set the funnel. They don't have that opportunity. So Legends attackers will typically be better at hitting ring bases because they hit them all the time. They're used to it. So for me personally, I would prefer to not run ring bases against a ton of Legends attackers. I definitely do think that at least for a more casual clan, if you have an Ante 2 base and an Ante 3 base, you just have two, but you have your like go-tos, you can look at the other clan and see, oh, well, maybe the other clan has 10 or 15 people in Legends League. Maybe it might not be the best idea to run, an Ante 2 against them. Maybe we run an Ante 3 instead. How that actually affects the base building, I would say Ante 2 bases are typically symmetrical, whereas Ante 3s are not. Ante 3s are more about baiting specific attacks rather than an attacker saying, well, I'm just going to drop my queen on a corner and whichever way she goes, I'll adjust.
Right.
So that, I don't know if that answers that or not, or if that made sense, but
no, perfectly. And then I have a small follow-up. This one's from Mason. How do you find inspiration to build new and different bases? You're going through a builder's block right now, so maybe this will help.
Yeah, I'm struggling with that right now. Yeah. So for me, typically I like to think in my head. There's not anything I haven't done. As I said before, I have 9,000 bases built.
Oh.
There's something when I see something new, I jump on it. I say, oh, that's pretty cool. Let me see if I can kind of adjust that and use that concept maybe, but in a different way. A big thing for me was the holes in the walls. I started doing holes in walls very, very early on. In fact, before we even, like, the holes in the walls were even a thing, I did it a couple of times on Town Hall 12 bases by accident. And I didn't really realize what they were doing until I had a Town Hall 12 base that one of the attackers dropped a super wall breaker and it just hit a wall on the outside. And I was like, that's not normal.
Nice. Happy accident.
And then I started doing that a little bit more. And it was around that time where other builders started kind of getting the same idea. And as a building community, we just started putting holes in walls to mess up super wall breakers. I would say that a lot of times when I'm getting inspiration for things, I'm not meaning to get inspiration from something. Sometimes I like to go to, some of the esports clans that I build for. I like to go to their clans during SCCWL week or the Supercell Clan War leagues. I like to go there and I just like to see, what does the opponent's bases look like and are our guys failing on them? And if they failed, why did they fail on that? So that's one thing I like to do. I like to go around and hopefully after this week, I'll be able to get around to that and really figure out what's going on and maybe I can get myself, maybe I can get myself out of this. But yeah, it's, for me at least, I definitely do run out of inspiration. However, I try and get it back as soon as I can, or maybe I'll try and build a different style that I have in my back pocket and see how that goes, which is what I'm doing right now. But I would say, honestly, the biggest thing, if you're a builder who's really trying to build or trying to learn to build, and you struggle with coming up with new ideas or coming up with something different to do in your base, no matter, I truly mean this, no matter how stupid it seems to you or it seems to the people around you, or if people tell you that will never work, try it anyway, trust yourself, give it a go, and see what happens. Because you might have one of those happy accidents that everyone was looking at you saying, dude, that'll never work.
I have my last question for you. This one's from Pranay. He's a longtime Clash Files member, and he wants to know, is base building worth the time and effort you spend in terms of the reward for it, i.e. money for the bases? Feel free to not answer that if you don't want to.
No, I'll answer that because actually I think answering this in an honest way will actually maybe hold a little bit of merit to how I prefer to build my bases. I actually don't build bases for the money. I started building bases because it was something fun to do, and I still build bases because it's something fun to do. I would say actually what I enjoy the most about building bases for customers is being able to learn little things, you know what I mean? Or maybe a customer will ask, hey, can you put this compartment in a base? Probably my favorite thing about base building right now is actually working with the customers to build them a base that they just fall in love with. Because we all have that one base that we're like, you know, I really like this base. If we're going to go against a good clan, I'm going to use this base. So I think that kind of creating that base and working with the customer is definitely something I enjoy doing. Another thing is when it comes to the money part, I actually, in Precision at least, we don't charge for things that a lot of other services charge for. For example, if you have an important war coming up and you say, hey, can I help test the base? At every single other company, they'll charge you extra to test the base with them. I personally don't believe in that. I don't think you should have to pay more to get a more quality base. I think every base sold should be quality. So I don't think that that's necessary. And there's actually other things that we do at Precision that we're kind of working on in private, but when they get announced, it'll kind of show that we care more about quality than actually making money. It's the same thing that a lot of the money that we make at Precision, it goes to the builders, and then like the builders other than me get paid for the bases they build. That's a big thing. I make sure that those guys are taken care of. After I make sure those guys are taken care of, I try and see, okay, well, can I put the money into this? Can I put the money into that? You know, maybe it's something small like paying bot subscriptions, or like what I'm doing right now is trying to work on new graphics and see if I can get someone to do them. I'm trying to reinvest into the company and make it bigger. We can work with more customers. We can try and help people win a couple more wars and just have a good time doing it.
Fantastic.
That's awesome. Well, I think we're going to try and get a few people to come up on stage. I know we're running a little short on time, but if people can raise their hands if they want to come up and ask a question live, I will do my best to get you up here as I see hands raised.
Yeah, don't be shy. Let's get to Andrew some
here's,
questions here. Let's test that
baby
brain of
1,
his.
2, 3. Let's see. Okay, Brighter. I'll bring you up on stage here. Okay, go ahead, Brighter. Ask your question.
So when building against like the top people in Worlds, what do you do when you're trying to build against like the Queen Walkers, for instance, stars who can do so many different attacks? How do you get him to do, or how do you predict which attack that he would be likely to go with?
Okay, so for Town Hall 14, I actually cannot answer this question. When I saw you type the question, I was like, I really hope I get to answer that one, because me and Danny had this experience of trying to bait stars maybe 3-4 months ago at Town Hall 13. Stars at Town Hall 13, what I noticed is, and I do a lot of studying on the attackers, what I noticed is that stars liked to do the Super Wizard P.E.K.K.A. Smash, or what we now call Chinese Smash, but he liked to do it before it was like super well known as Chinese Smash. It was just like a weird P.E.K.K.A. Smash. And what he liked to do is he liked to enter the base in such a way that he would kind of pass the town hall on his way through the base, and the wizards and the queen would be able to get the town hall, but the P.E.K.K.A.s would just push right on through. So instead of the traditional attack where, you know, maybe you would Warden Walk an Inferno or the Scatter and then enter through the town hall, what he was doing is he would enter adjacent from the town hall. Let's say the town hall is at, I know you're a builder, so I can say it like this. if the town hall is at 7:30, he would enter from like 4:30, and he would kind of pass the town hall on his way through the base. And that was just a tendency that I noticed while kind of studying for him. I never got the opportunity to build a base for him to bait that attack. And then Danny was building for Brian Fan Club, and they had a match against Queenwalkers, and he said, Andrew, how do I bait this? Like, how do we do this? And it was actually so much fun kind of working with him, trying to build a base that was going to bait Stars. Unfortunately, Stars didn't take the bait, but it wasn't, he would have taken the bait. We know he would have. It's just they ran another base that we had no control over. Danny only built one base for the war, but they ran another base that was more appealing to this smash attack. However, he did it the exact way that we thought he was going to do it. So I would say baiting players like that, you're more looking for tendencies that they do rather than the strategies. You're looking for how they do the strategy less than what they do with it.
Gotcha.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Brighter.
Who's next? Suvak, I think that's how you say your name. Go ahead and ask your question.
So I have a question. For a Town Hall 10, what do you think, like, do you have like any websites that I would be able to find like a good base design for?
Okay. Is this for like a competitive war or anything? So for Town Hall 10, it's kind of tricky. So right now, I wouldn't say that there's anyone building for like just normal Town Hall 10 wars. I wouldn't say there's any builder out there that's specializing in Town Hall 10 where Town Hall 14 troops are allowed. There is Town Hall 10 siegeless. Is that what it would be for?
No, probably not.
Okay, so if it's not for Town Hall 10 siegeless wars, in my personal opinion, and I really do care when I say this, and I don't think other builders would say this, is that I would not go buying a Town Hall 10 base unless it's for siegeless wars. I think that like full transparency with customers is a big deal. And no, I would not recommend going to buy a base. I would rather see somebody, maybe go on YouTube and just look at a couple of bases and see what you like. Or go on YouTube, look at a couple of bases, see what you like, and then maybe adjust things and maybe play around with things and kind of start doing your own thing. For me personally, Town Hall 10 was a big learning point for building. That's where I really felt like, okay, maybe I could become pretty good at this. So if you're a Town Hall 10, like your main account is Town Hall 10, I would definitely play around with building a little bit and just see what happens.
Thanks, Suvak.
Thank you.
Okay, let's try Bill. Go ahead, Bill. Can you unmute yourself and ask your question? Hello? Not muted. Sorry, Bill. Maybe type your question in base build questions, and Peter can watch for it and read it. Are there any other questions that anybody wants to come on stage? ODS, bring you up on stage here. Should be able to click the invitation there, ODS. There he is.
All right, I have Bill's question.
Okay. You want to ask Bill's first, and then ODS is after.
Okay, Bill asks, is there any baits that have worked very well for you, and can you share them and explain how they work and why they work?
Yes. However, give me a sec so I can find an example of one of them. I think that's a very hard question to answer without
A specific,
having
right?
an example.
Yeah.
So I can take the next question while I'm looking for a base that I'm allowed to show.
Okay.
Mainly, I'm going to look back at some of the older bases from the WSG finals, and then we'll talk about some of the baits from that.
Okay.
Perfect.
ODS, did you want to ask your question? Seem to be having a little bit of technical problem with people being able to speak. Okay. What I'll do, ODS, is I'll move you back down, and I'll re-invite you up. Maybe it's a glitch here.
I'm going to find something here.
I think new technology.
So, Andrew, I did have a question for you while you're looking, and it seems like we just got a couple of people popping up with questions. But something I was wondering about is you touched on it earlier about the burnt base bot. How does something like that help you as a base builder, or is it just straight up just a detriment to what you're trying to do?
I would say it's just a straight up detriment.
No, that's fair. That's why I'm asking the question.
I love the people at Burnt Base. I'm very close with a lot of them. However, they really ruin it for me sometimes.
What was that free trial they had of their bot just a big royal pain in the butt?
Yes, 100%. Wars would be streamed, and then people would do recaps, and it would end up on Twitch and YouTube, and Burnt Base would pull it from Twitch and YouTube, and it would mean that we needed 20 fresh bases every single week for CWL. It was a real pain, especially if we had one that was working really, really good. I will say, and I lie, there is one good thing about burnt base, and it's the fact that people trust it way too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
People
you can move traps and stuff.
exactly.
Yeah.
There were definitely a couple of times that we saw an attack on burnt base, and we were like, well, they might try that. In fact, I know that at one point in another clan I was in, one of the builders actually built a base, uploaded him tripling it in friendly challenges to YouTube so that it would show up on burnt base, and then changed all the traps so that attack wouldn't work.
Oh, I like it. It's kind of
So
greasy, but I like it.
you can use burnt base as a weapon sometimes. Typically, it doesn't work like that.
That's pretty clever. Okay,
Yeah,
ODS
I don't
was
even.
saying-
Oh, sorry. Yeah, is ODS here? Cool.
Oh, no, he's still typing. Still
He's,
typing.
is he still typing? Okay.
Okay, I was gonna say as a
no.
bit of an alteration to that question, then maybe has there ever been a situation where you could use that where you'd be like, hey, this looks like it's gonna be a Lalo base, and then people like they check it out and it's on burnt base for Lalo, but then you can actually use it to defend against something like Pekka Smash or something like that instead.
You can. Typically, when I would try and do a burnt base, I call it a burnt base snipe because I mean that's exactly what you're doing. You are
Yeah, you're just trying to snipe. You're just trying to copy someone
Yeah.
else's attack. Yeah.
exactly. So what I would say from a builder standpoint is that you can definitely play around with an attacker's head. However, at the end of the day, if everything looks the same on the base, typically an attacker is going to go for it, the attack that was on burnt base. And if you're in a war where the attacker is smart enough to say, oh, well, it's been hit like that, it's probably trapped, then you probably shouldn't be running a base that's already been used.
Yeah, that's fair.
I do have an example base. I have two that I can show. They're both Town Hall 12 bases. They're both kind of old, but it'll explain. It'll answer the question at least. So the first is a screenshot of something that we did in Valor Margulis, VM as we call it. The invite winners from last season. It was
season
pretty
9
impressive
invite.
what they were able to do. But I learned this sort of system that they did, which was the checks and then the not so checks, the kind of confused things. I don't really know what that's called. It basically, what we would do is we'd see what the enemy clan did a lot, and then we would list it out in the importance of the attack that we needed to defend. So what this image shows is that last war the clan did 5 Zaplalo attacks. So that was the main thing we tested. They did the most Zaplalos at Town Hall 12. So we built bases to defend Zaplalo the most. And then we would move on to Zap Witch with Super Giants. So basically the green check mark means yes, it defended it, and then the red means we haven't tested that yet. Then what we went on to do, here's just another example. This was one of the bases that baited hybrid that I was talking about earlier. This is more specific for actually baiting an attack. The other was kind of just showing the process beforehand and the studying that goes into it. This base was actually baiting hybrid, and it's quite an old base. One of the things you can see, actually, funny, I said this earlier, the wall hole at about 1 o'clock right behind the laboratory, one of those first generation holes that I started doing at Town Hall 12, that they weren't a thing. There was no reason to make them a thing. It was just kind of something I was doing to mess up wall breakers. Anyway, the bait on this base is actually the single Inferno. It's very gutsy to try and queen charge that single Inferno with the clan castle right behind it. So typically what an attacker would do is queen charge the town hall instead for the hybrid, and then they would hybrid into the single Inferno because you charge one, you hybrid next to it to kind of protect the queen. So what this is here was a attempt to see if singles were viable at Town Hall 12, and if they were, how could we use them? And we decided that they're really good for hybrid baits because you can force an attacker to say, I'd rather not charge a single if I don't have to. So by cutting off the queen charge from 9 o'clock, the only hybrid angle left is to hybrid through the single Inferno. So you can see the spring traps that are laid out just doubled up all over the place to take out the hybrid as it moves through the base. One thing that I definitely would say is that hybrid and spring traps are definitely something that is super underestimated. If you have 8 spring traps, each spring trap can take out 3 hogs or 3 miners if placed properly. And most people don't bring that many hogs and miners. You can probably take out an entire hybrid with well-placed springs. So that is something to keep in mind. On this base in particular, there's also an electron bait set up at around 4 o'clock with a tornado and 2 seeking air mines to kill the blimp early, and then a air skelly to distract the electro dragon while the queen kills it. So that's kind of just 2 baits in one. I figured this would be a good example.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's really cool. I didn't actually think about the portion of like for hybrid, like you were saying there with the spring traps, how much damage you could actually do if you hit on every single one of those spring traps.
Do we have any more questions in the base building questions channel, Peter?
I have ODS's question.
Okay, we'll do that. And then I have 3 people requesting to speak. We'll do those. And being sensitive to time constraints, we will take those 3 questions after ODS question and we will wrap things up.
Fantastic. ODS says, a question, but first a shout out. Andrew was a big part of 2 CWL titles last season, and both were won on the basis of defense and the biggest offensive era the game has ever seen. So shout out to you, Andrew, from ODS. And he asks, how much of base building is effort versus talent? You mentioned admiring Danny for working at it. Can anyone learn to be an effective base builder with effort?
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
well that is a very, very good question. And actually, I think I don't actually know how much quote unquote talent there is in base building. I don't think anyone's good at it right away. I think for you to be considered to have talent, you needed to put the effort in first. When I say that Danny had to work for it, I mean Danny went from posting bases that I personally thought were really good to joining our little group that we had going and kind of changing his style, kind of working with us and really kind of morphing the bases into something else and realizing that what he was doing made the bases worse. And then after building like that for so long and just trying to make it work and it not working, he had to completely turn a 180 and work so hard to get back to where he was and then make it better in his own way. And that is when I say that like Deco, Maru, and Dressy kind of just have like it's kind of strange. I don't want to say you have it or you don't, but there's like a certain image, like your brain works in a way that it's either going to line up the compartments or it's not going to. And I truly don't believe that for Town Hall 12 building, Danny's mind lined up with the compartments. I don't think it worked for him. He worked so hard at it that he just forced it to work for him. So that's when I say I admire Danny for working hard, that's what I mean by that. I would say anyone can learn to be an effective builder with effort. I've actually seen a lot of builders on the base building server go from very, very bad to very, very good in actually quite a short amount of time. But it definitely does depend on the effort that they put in. And it also depends on every base they build, are they learning from it or not? Because sometimes what builders do is they might build 5-10 bases in a week or for some in a day, because we were all there once.
Wow.
But if you build that many, are you trying to improve on every base or not? Because if you're building 10 bases a day, you're forcing yourself into a style. But if you're not improving as you're building those bases, then you're forcing yourself into a style that may or may not work, and then you're going to struggle to get out of it.
Right.
So I think the amount of time you put into it doesn't really matter as much as you need to put the effort in, but at the same time, you need to focus on, did this work? If it didn't work, then can we make it work? And if we can't make it work, we need to stop doing that, do something else. How can we get the same outcome of, okay, here, I'll just try and put an example here. This is kind of a little bit higher level, but it'll serve the purpose. There's multiple ways to do things in this game. There's multiple ways to attack a base. There's multiple ways to do a certain strategy on a base. Certain attackers will see a base different. This goes the same way for building. Some builders prefer to stop hybrid with seeking air mines to kill the queens. Others prefer to trap the hybrid with spring traps. Others prefer to use the seeking air mines for other things and kill the queen with just damage in the clan castle troops. There's a lot of ways to do things, but if something isn't working, let's say you're trying to kill a queen with a farm of 7 cannons, well, maybe that's not the best idea. But if you do 7 cannons in every single base and you're like, oh, well, that's my style, that's what I do. But if it doesn't work, then maybe you need to do something else. If you build 10 bases in one day with a cannon farm, what we would call it, it's not going to work. You are going to get used to building cannons farms And
Right.
the style of base you're building is going to look like, well, there should be 7 cannons right here. It's kind of an extreme example, but it does try and get my point across that you need to hear what other people are saying. And like I said earlier, if you truly do think something will work, go with it, try it. But if it doesn't work, you do need to be willing to adjust. I think that's I think that is the best way, that if you're going to really try and become a builder and you're going to put the effort in, that's the best way to do it. Build 1 or 2 bases, test them, see how they do, see what works in them, and then use that for your next 2 bases you build.
Okay, I've got 3 people waiting to ask questions. Zuvak, Brighter, and Eggs. Those will be our last 3 questions of the night. So I'll bring Zuvak up here. Go ahead, Zuvak.
All right. So for my question this time is, if you were town hall grinding before, like not leveling up things, and let's say you're at like town hall level 9 or 12 or 11, whatever town hall, do you think you should stay there or restart?
In terms of building,
In terms of like, what's it called? Trophy grinding.
okay, to be completely honest with you, I haven't done much trophy grinding myself. In fact, I'm a very lazy farmer. It's taken me forever. In my personal opinion, I would say wait, get good at the town hall level you're at, and then move on.
That makes sense. Let's see. Your next question is from Brighter.
Okay, so for newer builders, and I know I struggled with this when I first started, but I found the guides really hard to learn from. What would you say is a good way for a builder or someone to start with designing their own bases? What would you say is core inferno? If so, like, do you recommend they try to squiggle it or keep it boxier?
For a new builder, I'll tell you the same thing I tell everyone when I get this question, because I do actually get this a lot. For a new builder, start building bases based on the ones that you see that you like. Okay, if you like a base, then you say, okay, well, what do I like about this base? Maybe it's a big boxy core. Maybe it's a core inferno, like you said, but do that and then kind of build around it and see what happens. I think that the biggest part of building is trial and error. I think the biggest thing is learning what you did wrong and going from there, because nobody can just tell you what to do. You have to figure it out yourself.
Okay, so last question from the audience here. It's from Eggs. Welcome, Eggs.
Hello. So I guess for my question, I was just wondering if you like any other games like Fortnite or like anything else like that.
Do you even have time to play any other games, Andrew?
No, I'm going to be completely honest with you. The only game I really play is Clash of Clans. I do Clash of Clans. I kind of play, other stuff at kind of just like leisurely times, but balancing a social life. I'm a student, all of that. I prefer to, in the times I'm not doing Clash, because it's actually one of my jobs, and a couple of months ago it was my only job. But balancing the time that this takes with the rest of my life, it does get chaotic at times, and that's kind of just what I do. I don't really play many other things.
Understandable. Okay, well, I want to just wrap this up and say thank you to everyone for joining us tonight, and thank you, Andrew, for agreeing to come on the show and spending so much time with us. And thank you, everyone, for the wonderful questions. Thanks to everyone who submitted questions ahead of time. Andrew, do you have any shout outs you want to do?
I mean, I've done a lot of the shout outs already, I think. Just thank you guys for having me. It was a blast. Maybe this will happen again in the future. Who knows?
Awesome.
That'd be great.
Peter, how about you? Do you have any shout outs?
I'm going to shout out my son, Max. I noticed he was in the audience the whole time listening to his old dad go on about Clash of Clans. So shout out to Max.
Awesome. Rusty, how about you?
Yeah, I want to shout out Andrew. Big props for coming and doing this, bud. Appreciate it. You were big help for KGH when we were doing our various lower town hall levels over the past few years. So you're in my heart for base building for sure. You're my man. So I appreciate it. And then I also want to shout out the Toronto Maple Leafs for Peter. I heard they had a good round today. Heard they shot par for their handicap, so I think that they're doing good. So yeah, not too bad. And also want to shout out those Jets for you, Kat. So
thank you.
Yeah, there's nothing like a good old sweepy. So, anyways, that's about all I had to say. So
that's it. Eh?
Yeah.
Okay. For me, I just want to shout out Fox for helping us put this together.
Yes.
Really appreciate all her help and hard work on this. And if anyone wants to connect with Andrew, going to post his link to his server. We'll put that in the show notes, and we'll post it also here in the CFF server, and you'll be able to join Precision Base Design server there and talk to his team of builders. And just want to say thank you again for everybody for listening, and please send us your comments and suggestions for the podcast at KGH Podcast on Twitter or here in the server. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
That's it. Off the air.
Awesome. That was good stuff. Andrew, you're the man.
I'm not gonna lie, it was a little stressful at the beginning.
It seemed a little regimented, but you did good. You did real good.
Yeah. And the audience was really great.
You really seemed to settle in when we got to like the later stages of the podcast. It seemed, like whatever. It was a little bit of business up front, but not a big deal. Like that's, you're running a business there. You're doing good at it, and you deserve all that publicity and all that stuff. So.
And I just want to say, Andrew, that I have one of your bases on my 14, and it has yet to be tripled. So
now I'm curious which one.
Well, I'll send it to you.
You have to send it to me, yeah.
Yeah.
You
So
needed
I
to
think-
charge her double is what you needed to do.
Just after Channel 14 dropped. So it's stood up in SCCWL, and so I really appreciate that. So, all right, everybody.
I will say, I did just get a DM from Deco saying the cannon farm is going to happen. So
You planted the seed.
You count me out on that one. I'm not going to try and figure that one out.
Okay, well,
Oh, God.
thank you, everybody. I'm going to sign off and say goodnight, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Kat.
for sure.
Good night.
Yeah, have a good night, everybody.
Yeah, have a good night.